Brought to you by the Rugby Outlet Mall, equipping you for freedom and connection through rugby. Find out more at rugbyoutletmall.com.
Hey, what's really good, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Greaux Rugby. My name is GiftTime Bailu, and this is the podcast where we talk to people about the freedoms and opportunities that they have been able to create, find, receive, or take advantage of through rugby. And we have a great guest for you today, Eddings, the legendary Eddings of the GrayWolves, the predominantly African American team from the 90s, 80s, 90s, and today, leading away, very untold but also very known story. And a lot of people, especially in the older generation, would know who they are. Very reminiscent to Roots Rugby, but that made by Kyle and Tiana Granby, who we talked to for the first episode. Go check it out. And this was a conversation that I really was looking forward to, and not just for a year or two. I've been looking forward to doing this conversation for the better part of the last 3 to 4 years because of the fact that I had been told about the GrayWolves way back in maybe like 2010, 2011. I had a teammate who had told me if I improved on my passing that he would hook me up with the GrayWolves and try and get me a chance to play with them. Of course, he never actually followed through. I also never really improved on my passing because I like to run the ball and crash it, all right? Forward life, ka-ka-ka. But hey, it was really good talking to him. It was really good hearing the stories and the perspective. And it was kind of interesting because you see a lot of parallels that he dealt with that are still happening today in a lot of nuanced ways. It's not exactly what you think. So, get your mind out of it. But some of it is exactly what you think. So you weren't that far off. But you're going to find out. Maybe. I guess. We're going to make the assumption you're going to find out. But I want to let you guys know we got dos sponsors today. Duas sponsors. Gotta hit that Portuguese, First one, obviously, Rugby Outlet Mall. Guys, here to equip you for freedom and communication in your rugby journey. RugbyOutletMall.com. We have a brand new, and this is where a second sponsor comes in, but I'll actually go to that a little bit later. But guys, if you guys are looking to be able to set up your rugby lifestyle that is more than just what you do on the field and you want to be able to express it off the field, go hit up Rugby Outlet Mall. Here for anybody who is trying to explain rugby in a way that people can understand in a pop culture, go check out Rugby Outlet Mall. We have the stuff for you to be able to explain what you need and to be able to enjoy what you are supposed to get as a part of being with this rugby community. From movies to books, food to merch. And guys, this merch is dope. So you guys definitely want to check it out. And our second sponsor is the documentary Singapore to Tokyo, Any Way We Can, is officially released on video on demand, and you guys can go to the link at rugbyoutletmall.com and click it there. Guys, grab the series, 7-episode series, 20 minutes apiece. It is well worth it. And then look, I know it's easy for me to be biased because I was part of it, but look, I am an unbiased film critic. I have no problem hurting feelings. If you guys have seen me on FTF, you guys know that I have no problems calling something bad if it's bad. And honestly, I was part of this whole thing, and this documentary is still intriguing to me. A great adventure. I think it's something for everyone, especially in this COVID-19 era. It was perfect for being able to realize how important connection and how widespread the community and the culture really is, and not just within rugby, but with people, and knowing what it is to bond through obstacles. And it is an amazing story, an amazing journey. We dealt with a lot of trials and tribulations, and look, you have to check it out. Like that's all I can say. You have to check it out. Go to rugbyoutletmall.com. Look up Singapore to Tokyo any way you can, any way we can. You guys are gonna love it. I promise you that. You guys will absolutely love this documentary. And if you guys do, absolutely send it. But in terms of Rugby Outlet Mall, look, I still want to leave you with the promo code GROW Rugby, GREAUX Rugby, for all GiftTime Rugby, HBCU Rugby Classic, and travel gear. All our shirts, 20% off on all our gear, all our merch, everything that we have under GTRN and HBCU Rugby Classic, 20% off. And yeah, you guys are gonna love it. Tell your friends. We're setting up the community. Rugby is as much a lifestyle as it is a sport, so get ready for it. But guys, without further ado, I don't want to hold you back anymore because I know I can ramble. Here is Ram Eddings, GrayWolves. Check it out.
Grow Rugby, Grow Rugby, Grow Rugby, Grow Rugby, Grow Rugby, Grow Rugby, Grow Rugby.
All right, everybody, welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. I got another VIP guest for us today, coming out of Idaho, but one of the legends of the game. I don't know if you guys realize, one of the most talked about on the low rugby teams in the GrayWolves, the founder, the master, the legend, Mr. Ram Eddings. Mr. Ram, thank you for coming on to the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You know, I have to say, the first time I ever got a chance to hear about you and the GrayWolves was through a friend, a teammate of mine, actually, who had told me that he was going to be able to try and connect me with you guys if I learned how to pass a little better. He was like, look, there's this team, they travel, it's an all predominantly black team, but if you learn how to pass, I'll connect you with them, but I don't want you going over there unless you know actually how to offload the ball correctly. So unfortunately, he never really ended up connecting me with you guys, but you know, it was the first time that the first words of the GrayWolves were brought to my attention. So this was maybe 2010, I think, is when that happened.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, kind of to kick this all off, you know, I know you have a long history, but what started you with rugby? How did you get started getting into rugby?
Well, you know, the really quick story, my father was military, and I actually spent 4 years in England, graduated from high school in England, started my rugby career in Pocatello, Idaho. So I was where it all started, had no idea, knew about it, but didn't play. But I started my career in Pocatello by some friends asking me to play. And my first words to them was hell no. So that didn't last very long. So I started playing back in 1974.
See, and what makes it interesting is I know here in Louisiana, 1968, 1969 was about whenever I think rugby started coming into the arena alone. So you really have been at the forefront, basically, of this USA rugby journey. You know, the modern era one, not the 1923 Olympics yada stuff.
Yeah.
Like, for you, like, what exactly ended up having you change over from that hell no to a yes, especially in a place like Idaho that's so errant of a place?
Yeah. Well, the guys, they just, the really good guys had two Polynesian players at the time, and they just kept at me because we worked together. And so they just finally, okay, Ram, you got to come out. You got to come out. And so basically they just wore me down. And so, so I ended up going out, had no idea, really about the game and stuff like that, but started playing and actually got injured my rookie year, shoulder injury. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to quit playing this. I know I can play this. So I had surgery and got my shoulder back in position, and then went out and started playing that following year. And ever since, it was one of those things that I was not going to let people say that I couldn't play something because of an injury. That wasn't going to happen.
I like the absolute, it's the perfect level of stubbornness where it's like, look, I'm going to win one way or another. Like there's not, it's going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, but we're going to make this happen. So wait, so you basically, your formative years were in England. Was that also kind of the start of your athletic career as well?
Well, like I said, my dad was pretty much military, so I played in different states. But England was football, but I'd also played baseball and so on, judo, and so on like that. So, but at the time, football and track were my two number one sports.
We're talking football, soccer, not football, American football.
American football.
American football. Wait, what was your track event primarily?
The 100 meters. I ran the 100 meters, and I was pretty good at that until I got to college. Then I realized that I wasn't fast enough, so I switched over to the 400 meters, and so that was my race.
Yes. See, for me, whenever high school, for me, I knew immediately because we had to do track for football. So it was 100, 200, and 400. Literally was mediocre at all of them, but my 400 was my scariest one because it's the one where you're sprinting, but it's basically long distance, in my opinion. It is a sprinter's long distance. Only thing crazier is the 800, and I don't even consider those people to be human at this point.
Oh, yeah. Hey. Unfortunately, that was what my coach used to make me practice for the 400 with the 800 meter guys, and that was always just not right. That was nothing about that was right.
Oh, so you graduate, you came back to England. So when was the point from whenever you came back from high school to whenever you played? What was the time period between those? Because you obviously you went to college, and where did you end up going to school at?
I went to school in South Dakota.
Why do you go to these most errant of like blanket areas?
It was all my dad. It was all my dad, and the thing is about, they actually, like I said, I was in England. So my first trip ever away from my parents without them was from England to South Dakota.
Wow.
And yes. And my dad asked me for the next 4 years, why was I up there? And I was like, what do you mean, why am I here? But it was awesome. It was really awesome. I think one of the things that was great about it is that, of course, you grow up with cowboys and Indians and so on and stuff like that. But I had an opportunity to interact with Native American students.
That's so dope.
And that was awesome. That was awesome.
I always talk about people about whenever you're traveling internationally about how it can create a completely different worldview on how a completely different worldview because everything becomes much broader and a lot of problems come out a lot smaller. I have to say, it feels like in that same guise, you had that with being able to go to South Dakota. Like,
Right.
while you were already internationally traveled, but you're talking about a group of people who, let's say, for the lack of a better word, at that time is kind of condensed into this caricature from maybe a John Wayne film or anything like that.
Right.
And now you're getting to interact and be like, oh, these are real people. Like, this might not be as real as, you know, we're taking it from this game component of it.
Right. You know, it was all the stereotype things that, you know, you watch and you see, because when we always play Cowboys, and then I always wanted to be the Cowboy. But now I had this opportunity to see the real deal.
Yeah.
And it was really, really pretty awesome.
Man, that's awesome. So was it in South Dakota when you started playing rugby, or did you make your way back to Idaho at that point?
It was back in Idaho. It was in Idaho.
So you were working, the Polynesian guys were like, hey, Ram, you need to play. Clearly they were like, you were a track guy. You can help us here on the field.
Right. And so, you know, and then once I started, you know, and then it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And then you started to learn the game. I think one of the things that was really good for me for the years that I played 10 years in Idaho before I moved on, I had some great coaches.
Yeah.
I had a couple of South African coaches that came through there. I had an English coach that came through, and so they taught me a lot, and they helped me move my game. So that was really pretty cool. And we would travel. Anybody wanted a rugby game with our team, we'd go. So that also helped out a great deal.
So this is the part that kind of interests me, because we're in this point in time here, you know, it still feels like we're in a growth, but we've advanced, obviously, within rugby. But there's always this issue of, you know, being able to maybe find the right coaches, or, you know, making sure that we have a system and understanding on how to teach players. In 1974, what was rugby like for then? Because there's two parts on that. It's one, the fact that you guys had so many people that were coming from other countries in Idaho, which, I'll be honest with you, is not exactly the place I would have thought there would be a high diversity of internationals going through there. Maybe Cali, maybe Utah, maybe Washington, but I wouldn't have thought Idaho. But then the second part is you're talking about that base stage of rugby, of, I guess, the beginning eras of modern rugby occurring there. So what was that experience for you like, and in terms of environment to teaching?
Well, the environment is, on our team, and we did have quite a few guys from different places, but on our team we had 2 blacks, and that was it. And there wasn't very many blacks, period. And you know, whenever I go, if I saw a black player when we went somewhere to play, it was a miracle, because we just didn't see it. But I think one of the good things about it, I didn't run into any really heavy racial issues or anything. But it was always that deal that we didn't know how to play.
Right.
And they always, of course, my first position was on the wing, you know, because they want to put us all on the wing. But I ended up liking that. I loved the wing position, and I played that for 10 years. But in this region, in Idaho, Montana, surprisingly, the environment was really good. It was really good. And of course, you know, you run into sometimes, because I was pretty fast, so, you know, and then of course I did certain things like wear white shoes, you know, and you know that, of course,
that's a no-no, because you're stepping away.
Oh yeah, but then the white shoes, when I got slower, the white shoes went away too. So, but you know, I think the biggest thing for me was the coaches, the guys that came along. They recognized the speed I had, but they also wanted me to be able to do more.
Right.
So I had some really, like I said, really good coaches that wanted me just not to worry about the speed, but this is what else I can do, the kicking game and doing some stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The passing, and they taught me those things. And so as I moved along, I feel like my game got better. I honest with you, I didn't say probably much of anything for about 6 years. I just listened and watched, and eventually things started to come along with my game and the game period. But that was pretty much it. I just consider myself lucky that I had those guys who really wanted to teach me how to play the game.
That's dope. One thing that, especially when it comes within the Black community, and I know I face it whenever I started playing, not in any harsh way, but it's always in that curious way. Like whenever other Black people will hear about you playing rugby or anything, they're just like, the first question is like, what? And then the next one is like, yo, only white guys play rugby. Like, what was the context for you whenever you would tell like either your family, like your dad or your friends within the community, like what was their reactions to playing it? Because again, this is 1974. 1974 on.
Well, like I said, when with the team and when I first started, we had 2 blacks, and it probably took about 10 years before we got a couple more, because it was like, no, and I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, you got speed, you're big, this is your game, and you could really play this game. No pads. First thing is no pads.
Wow.
And it was just ironic. It was so ironic. They would come out and watch. They would come out and support us and stuff, but trying to get them on the field wasn't going to happen.
No.
It was always, you have no pads. No, but we teach you how to do this without having pads and stuff. But the other thing about it, it was good with the women.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because look, short shorts, strong hits. Like, come on now, let's go.
Oh yeah. So it was always a good part of it stuff.
I find it so funny because I swear when you tell that story, it literally is the exact same discussion that I had with with other people whenever I started playing. Again, I started playing in 2009. And so for me to be able to hear like, oh yeah, I would see all these big Black guys and all these women and go be like, yo, you're fast, you're strong, like, yo, come play. And they'd be like, no, there is no, like you said, no pads. And I'm like, bro, I don't even have, look, I'm not even that fast. I'm quick, I'm not fast. I'm small. Like, I'm taking the hits. How can you not? You're like pure muscle. How are you afraid to take this tiny?
Oh yeah, it was there, and that was for a long time. Even when the GrayWolves together, I'd go out, try to recruit at the park and at the basketball and stuff, and it's like, would you like to play rugby? No, man. We don't do that stuff. That kind of stuff. It was just ironic.
History. I'm telling you, I've learned as I've gotten older. History works in cycles, not in lines, and it's wild to see how much it repeats itself over and over again.
Right. Oh God, yes.
So let me ask. So you guys start touring. What's touring like in 1974? In the 70s and 80s, like.
Oh, hey, we wanted to play rugby.
Mm-hmm.
And so, somebody calls up and says, you guys, we would you like to come down and play a game? We were gone. I think that was one of the best things about rugby at that time, is that everybody was willing to travel. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter, we went to California, we went to Oregon, we go wherever. If we could get a game and play, we'd go. that was the part that was really good, because now you have an opportunity to see other players from all over the area, and you learn.
Right.
I learned so much from traveling and interacting with guys, and making some tremendous friends, guys that, we played against over and over and over the years, but we remained friends. But that traveling part was so important for my growth in rugby, because I got a chance to see other guys playing, and of course I stole a lot of stuff. You steal a lot of stuff because you were seeing the guys doing some different things. So it was great, and that's what I miss about rugby today, is that nobody wants to travel.
See, and I think that's interesting, because I've always felt the same. I think that whenever there's one within the team, the bonding that comes with the travel, that alone sets a whole precedent right there.
Right.
And then after that, it then goes like the experience of just the environment itself. I remember for my first kind of real travel experience, it was actually what locked me in, and it was a social tournament called Pitch a Tent that's based out of Lafayette, Georgia.
Okay.
Literally middle of nowhere part of Georgia, right? Just a little bit south of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it was in that element where you get to see like all these rugby people and men and women in the environment that was purely what I like to call rugby what was that rock festival from the 60s with Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, Woodstock.
It was rugby Woodstock. That's exactly what Pitch a Tent has always been to me, rugby Woodstock. But it was there where I was like, okay, the game and the culture kind of melded together, and I got to be much closer with my teammates after that, because it's just a different environment. It's just a different feeling altogether.
Right.
For you, your first game traveling, because again, you resisting initially, and then you have your first game overall, that's a different light. But whenever you first traveled with the guys for your first team, what was that like for you? Like being able to go around?
It was really good, especially because like I said, I had worked with the Polynesian guys that introduced me, and then the other guys. But it was really, really good. For my first time traveling with these guys, it was like, okay, I didn't know what to expect, and of course, then, back there times, after the game, there was the beer and this stuff. And so I didn't know what to expect with that, but it turned out to be good, because everywhere I went, I also knew that my back was covered.
Right.
These guys were going to make sure that they took care of me and stuff. And so that was always good. And then again, the camaraderie and the stuff. Of course, I got dogged out. They set me up and do all kinds of things for as that rookie person traveling and so on and stuff. And I learned very, very early, do not lose the car keys. Whoever has the car keys, you make sure you keep up with them, because and so. But it was really good, and again, like I said, the places I went to, we traveled to, was just learning and gaining the respect of not only my guys as we went along, but also the opponents and so on.
How much of your England experience kind of helped with what's the word I'm looking for? Intertwining with the guys. Like, how much of that, like, hey, I grew up in an environment that I might not have played rugby in, but it is that international environment. Like, how much did that help in terms of you being able to build camaraderie with the team as well?
Well, I think one of the things about being a military person is that, you travel a lot. And as you travel, each place that you go to, you have to be able to adjust. and interact,
Right.
because was always somewhere new and so on. So I think that helped a lot uh, in, in things that was going on, and it probably helped a lot with me eventually. He said, okay, giving in to playing rugby, because it was something new, and it was kind of like when my dad was also stationed in Japan, and when I went to Japan, I took up judo, and
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea what judo was, but I took up judo in Japan, and so I learned that sport,
Right.
and stuff like that. So it was always that thing that you try. You try something new, and I think that's what the traveling and stuff uh, gave me, because you were always meeting different people in
Right.
different situations. So I think that helped a lot in me transitioning into that.
And even talking in terms of like your dad, obviously as a military guy, there's a level of discipline that is, I think, inherently imparted onto the kids as well. Or like, did that factor into also your ability to perform athletically, both from the times of playing football and track to what you did with rugby?
It's really interesting with that. My dad was, and my mom and dad, uh, never pushed me for anything in sports.
Hmm.
And matter of fact, very seldom, my dad I played baseball. He'd come to a couple of baseball games. My mom would come to a track, and she never came to football games. But it was that deal that they just let me figure that out, and they always supported me, but it wasn't always necessary that they had to be right there.
Yeah.
Uh, they just say, hey, this is what you want to do. This is what you have to do in order to do that, and to keep moving, And so when I look back at that, I was really happy with that, because you know I didn't have my dad sitting up in the stands telling me later on that I struck out 3 times or some stuff like that.
Right.
But that support was always there. Uh, so I know that really quick. He came to one track meet in the 6th grade in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a pretty fast team for 6th grade. And he actually had some college coaches there that were watching everybody and stuff. And they talked to my dad, and so my dad talked to him and stuff like that. That was the last track meet he came.
Oh.
He never came again, and it didn't bother me. But I think he said, "Okay, I guess he has got something, some speed or some stuff that's going on, so I don't need to be there."
He's gonna be all right. I think he'll
Yeah,
be all right out there.
yeah. So uh, now, really quick, the scariest moment in rugby in my
Hmm.
whole life was I was playing in Texas and with the GrayWolves, and my mom came to a game, and I saw her coming as she was walking up to the field with some friends, and I was like, "Oh God!" And right about that time, because my mom used to we'd be in the store,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 30-something years old, and my mom would holler out in the store, "Baby!" And I was like, "Mom, you gotta quit doing that." So as she was walking up, I took a tremendous hit, and it hurt. But the scariest thing was, do not let my mother come up here and say, "Oh, my baby," because I would be ruined, And so, and people will ask me, that's the scariest moment. I jumped up, it hurt. It really did hurt, but I got up,
It's like, you will not be coming onto this field. There will be no, take care of my baby. Get away, get
no,
away. Let me go.
oh. And being with the GrayWolves, I'd have been ruined. I'd have been just totally ruined, So.
No, I can understand. I know my mom had, she's only come to, I think, maybe 2 rugby games of mine. And I remember the first time my mom came, my parents came. Well, my mom came. My dad only came to one other one, but my parents came. My mom came, and she she came through, and luckily, I think from playing football, she had already kind of braced herself for big hits or anything like that. But I remember sitting there, and I'm like, okay, guys, all right, there's two things. One, let me just impress her enough to let her understand that this is a good game, and I'm pretty all right with this. Like, I don't want to hear anything after. But the second one, please don't let anything major happen, because I do not need this imprint of fear in this woman's mind right now.
Yeah.
It's something about, like, you want to impress. I feel like there's the levels of people you want to impress whenever you play. It's your parents first for the sake of proving that there's a reason why you're playing it. Right. And then it's your girlfriend to be like, yo, look, I am badass. Like, recognize me. And then it's like your closest friends. It's like, look, guys, look, understand, you can't be on my level. That's the 3 levels that you get right there.
Oh, yeah. You know. And I think that rugby, in a real sense, rugby kind of puts that in a lot of guys' mind. Like we're talking about, guys didn't want to come out, but they come and watch you play, and they watch that stuff going, you're tough.
Nah.
You're tough.
Right.
But I ain't coming out. Right.
Like I said, it will always baffle me, because it's like, yeah, man, you guys are so tough. You guys are crazy. I know. You should come. Nah, man. Bro, I just watched you, like, punch through a punching bag. How are you talking about you're afraid of this little hit? These guys, you're afraid of these guys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Oh, man. So you played with this team for 10 years, traveling with them. So from what point did you start working on the GrayWolves? What brought up the idea of putting together the GrayWolves in the first place?
I think I know I ended up playing in Portland, Oregon also. And I think it was at that point in time that, and again, when I went to Portland, I played with the Portland team, which was a Division I team, men's club. There was no blacks. So I was the only black on the team.
Ironically, the less shocking thing that I've heard.
And I started thinking about it then, that, I mean, that black athletes can play the game.
Right.
And so the deal was, and it's a great game. I mean, when you learn and all the stuff that goes on, it's a great game. And so at that point in time, I was like, okay, we need to do something.
Right.
And so that it kind of popped into my head to do that. And then it took me a while to actually get around to moving and to doing it. But I just realized that, black and other minorities can play this game. And in a sense, we were being shut out, really. I mean, there wasn't a lot of recruiting going on for minority players at all, and it was just that situation. I thought we've been cut out, but we could play the game. If we put our minds and learn the game, we could be very, very good at the game. And so that kind of started it.
So was this did that come into fruition? Like what point in? Because I'm assuming that was while you were actually playing that this started coming into mind, correct?
Right.
Or so like how far into how many years had you been playing? Whenever you started thinking about that concept.
I think it was let's see, I went to Oregon, so 10. It was probably about 12 years. Okay. 12 years that it finally started to hit. Right after I moved to Oregon, then the idea kind of came up.
So it now becomes kind of the interesting part. Well, this whole thing has been really interesting, but it's kind of the interesting part in the development period because, again, now you have a sport that is, for all intents and purposes, it's still it's fledgling in the U.S. And I know the West Coast was a little bit heavier with it than probably other parts of the country, but you're still talking about a minority of players in it of itself. And now you're looking at it and how do we recruit Black players who have either never heard of this game to begin with, or they see it and they're just like, yeah, you're nuts. I'm not playing this. So how did you end up putting that together, that first tour for a team, and just even finding the people? Because it's not like you had social media to be jumping off from.
Right. Right. What I basically did is that, okay, we used to have, there used to be a magazine, a rugby magazine.
Right.
Okay. And it was a really good tool, and it was used a lot. So I put that into the magazine, that we were going to start a GrayWolves team, a predominantly Black team, and so and so. And then this is what I was looking for, players that would be interested in doing it. And the guys with the rugby magazine, they helped promote it. They helped put it out there for me, and so on. And then just a little word of mouth that I hooked up with a couple of other guys, and then I spread it with them, and then it just kind of started to move. But the rugby magazine, I put a big article in there, and they published it, and from there we started getting contacts.
Nice. So it was, I find that so uniquely interesting because, I talked to, I told you about them, but talked to the couple who founded this team, Greaux Rugby, that they're based out of New York. And in their initial stance of trying to find it, obviously they had a lot of support, in great ways, but there always came this underlying instance of as if there is a type of segregationist kind of concept, where there'd be other players, non-Black players, who would almost wonder if, one, if this concept is racist, and two, if it would admit having non-Black players, namely white players, in it. For you, like, whenever you put this into Rugby Mag, did you get any backlash at all, or was it just kind of widely kind of like, okay, yeah?
Oh no, we got backlash, and one of the questions that I always receive, well, why do you want to do that? And of course, with the same thing as segregation, stuff like that. My deal was, no, we're trying to recruit, and I kind of also said, if we can recruit, then it's going to help everybody. It's going to help you. So it's not that we're trying to keep segregated, but we're trying to recruit and get more Black athletes, more minority athletes involved in rugby. Mm-hmm. And, there's still some hesitation, but for the most part, I think it was something that teams across the country really wanted to do, but didn't know how to do it.
Right.
And so they didn't have that avenue, because they weren't going, one of the articles I wrote, and I talk about it, they're not going into the neighborhood to recruit. They're not going to go and do that. And so, and that was one of the major ways of recruiting. You had to go there. So I think they wanted it and stuff, and so we kind of helped them come along and say, okay, this is how we can do it.
No, so that's really interesting. Again, like we said before, it's very interesting how life has a tendency of repeating itself a lot, because we still find a lot of like a big time, a lot of this issue kind of reappearing again. I know even here in Baton Rouge, we have the cities kind of split into two sides, the affluent South and then the poor North, and typically the poor North kind of retains most of the Black American Black people. And obviously, it's not touched upon, ironically, as we have universities on both sides. But I've always felt like a lot of it is a factor of relatability and expectation, right, in terms of people knowing how to communicate at least their point to, young kids, and trying to show what the value is.
Right.
For you, when you put together that first tour, and you said, "Hey, we're bringing black players together." What was the first place that you wanted you guys to play? Was it 15s or 7s? Like, what was that first tour like?
First tour was 15s,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in Savannah, Georgia.
Whew.
Yes.
Man, you really like going into it.
Hey, well, I was actually playing in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when and stuff, and I moved to Georgia. We was working on this stuff, and I had been working on it, but that was getting ready for that first tour in Georgia since I was there, and that's another thing. When I went to Georgia, I had reservations because I told them, I said, you know, when I play rugby, it's going to be a legal way for white boys to jack my ass up.
Right.
So now y'all got legality around here. So, but it was there, and that was really interesting because the team in Georgia was really good group of guys. But we pulled it together and played there. I think one of the interesting things about that, so we ended up having 12 players. That's all that showed up. So we had 12 players, and it was a tournament, and we were trying to keep the black minority thing going.
Right.
So 3 brothers, morning of the tournament, walking through the park, walking their dogs, and the next thing you know, they're playing rugby, getting their asses kicked. Excuse me. But they came out. They were walking, and they were just leisurely going through. We told them, okay, we need this. This is what we're trying to do.
Right.
And we need 3 more players. And would you guys be willing to play? And they played. And
Nice.
That's how we kept that going.
Set
now, we didn't see them the next day. They didn't show up the next day, but but that was really pretty interesting because once we told them what we were trying to do, and they were good size, a couple brothers, and they came and played.
Yo, I love it.
So it was really, really pretty interesting. But in Savannah, we had a couple of times, a couple of teams talking stuff. And of course, the first team that we played, you know, they were out to beat our butts. They were like, okay, we're not going to let this black team come out here and do this stuff. Because, I mean, it's still that point, blacks can't play rugby.
Right.
But we ended up winning the game.
Yeah, buddy. See that?
So we won our first game, and for the first time, probably, we had speed, power. There was just so much. The group was just so powerful in all the elements that we had. It woke up some people. It really did.
See, and I find that completely interesting. And here's the other one question I was about to, I'm about to ask was, when you got to find out the people that you were going to bring on for your roster, I'm assuming these are guys that came from around the country and not just in any regional spot. So you guys didn't have like a massive amount of time to practice or anything. It seems like it was something that you had to do on the fly. What was that synchronization like for you guys?
You know, I think one of the things that we all realized right off the bat is that we had to play team ball. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, one of the things that was a big time motivator. We had to play team ball. The other thing was nobody wanted to be the person that let the team down. You know, so that was that part of it. And so when we came together, I think we had a couple of days to kind of pull it together and stuff. And we did. We just it was just that thing. You realize that we have to play team ball, but we also have to understand how each person can play.
Right.
And so but I think our first practices, we saw stuff and we saw each other, and it went on from there. It was pretty good. It was a pretty good mixture of what we needed to do.
See, that's dope. Like, and that's what I like, because I've heard this on multiple occasions, and again, talking with Kyle and Tiana and a couple guys who ended up playing for Roots teams for they said essentially the exact same thing. It's almost like it's an innate understanding that we have with each other whenever it's kind of like we get together. It's one, we're proving a point of
Right.
whether it's a limitation point or whether it's a cultural point that this is something that is real. Two, we know that we're trying to create something to attract more people from the community to be part of this, because like you said, we know that we can play and play it with depth, with knowledge and skill, with skill and talent depth, not
Right.
just simply talent. But the third one is the level of comfort and how much it feels naturally good to just be like, yo, I'm playing with my brothers and sisters over here. We know each other. We know our culture. Like, we understand each other.
And that was such a part of everything, is that we were there. And you're right. We had something to prove, and it was important that we did. And so I think that was the other thing that kind of pulled us together. That we wanted, because we had some athletes, the guys that showed up were players.
Yeah.
And we knew that we just really had to show our skills and our abilities to make this happen. So.
What was the furthest place that you guys pulled from? I mean, I guess technically from Idaho to Savannah, no, you were in Georgia at that time, but where was the furthest that you had a player coming in from to come play with you guys?
Oh, geez, oh gosh. We ended up with a 80-man roster. And so basically players from all over. We had players from New York, New Hampshire, Kansas City, from California, New Mexico, Texas, so Washington, D.C. So once we got everything moving, as time went along, then we just started getting players. We started getting, we put it out there, the GrayWolves are going to tour. It's open, come, and then we get there. I think we played, and they invited us to play in the Denver state game, Colorado State Games one year, and we had 45 players show up.
Wow.
Yes.
So, okay. So when, let me ask, because this seems like over a period of time, but when was it the point where you guys, as the GrayWolves, whenever you created this team, the first tour, you're talking 12 guys. When was the point whenever it was like, yo, people really are here for this? Like, you started getting players more than you would know what to do with for one team. Like, what was the point where it kind of like you saw it just like, yeah, now we're getting a skyrocket of interest?
Well, I think Denver, when we played at the Colorado State Games, was probably the big time because, like I said, we had 40 players, and that was really good. That was really good. We actually had picked up a New Zealand coach. I had this guy that I had coached with a little bit, and he was from New Zealand. And I was like, okay. So we worked with that and stuff. And we fired his butt. And the problem was, and he was in Denver, the deal was, all of a sudden he had 45, 46 Black, Hispanic, Native American rugby players with all kinds of talent and speed. I mean, our locks were 6'6" and 6'7".
Dog.
We had an ex-Eagle, his name was Rory Lewis, on the wing, who was faster than hell. We had all these people, and my boy didn't know what to do with He did not know how to coach him.
That's interesting to me, because you would think, especially in a place like New Zealand, where you have that variation of speed and talent in itself between the Kiwis and Pollies and Maori and all that. But you have this guy come through and it's just like kind of shell shocked on what to do with everything. Like, was that something? Yeah.
Well, it was the same. It's the same attitude. Blacks can't play. And so I think that he got that same attitude, although, because he kept asking, well, these guys are going to, so these guys that can play. And he was so nervous about that, can these guys can play.
Right.
And so I think when we got there and they all got there and we did our first practice, I think we just blew his mind. He couldn't comprehend all the talent that was on that team and what to do with it, So yeah, we had to make some adjustments,
That's,
but
it's I was talking with this guy Nick Walcott. He's out of Chicago, and we were talking about kind of what seems to always end up being the problem when it comes to that recruiting, that concept of play. And I'll say this, for what it's worth, whenever people, will come to me asking about, hey, how do we tap into this neighborhood, or how do we talk to this university, HBCU, or anything like that? A lot of what comes afterwards will be like, oh man, I can't wait to see all the speed and talent. It's almost kind of repetition of the same little bit of there's talent, but. And we were talking about what was the issue with utilizing football players and pro football players. And there's always a concept of, oh, they're not going to understand how to play the game. They just have the talent. And we were wondering, if it is maybe not an intentional, but an inherent distrust of what the level of understanding for skill, because the game has always seemed simple. I mean, there's complexities to it, but it's always simple. There's the, sports are still sports, but sometimes it feels like when you talk to people and you talk about them with elite athletes, it's almost like, man, this game is far too complex to be able to be taken in at a late stage or anything like that, like in their 20s or something like that. And for you guys, that's what it seemed like whenever you're dealing with some of these coaches and seeing these elements? It's like, oh, you guys, it's too late for you guys, but that kind of aspect.
It was. We dealt with that a lot, and I dealt with that a lot. I still deal with that a lot in situations. Is that we can't do this, we can't learn, or the same thing, it's too late. Never too late. All you have to do is have the attitude, willing to come out and try.
Right.
And I think, yes, rugby, people say, well, it's a really easy game, but there's so many little things that you have to learn to do and play, where to be, how to be in a supporting role, what to do this and do that. And it can be tough at times for, especially, I think I heard the deal about the football players and so on and stuff. And I've had a lot of football players come out with coaching the team. I tell you the fact for me was always with football players is, first of all, they always thought they were going to come out and knock somebody into next week.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is the running, the running.
It's no longer sprint burst. It's consistency.
Yeah. You got to keep going. So when you tell them, okay, you got 80 minutes of running, I always felt that was the concern. That was a concern. But when you find the ones that were willing to do it, it's a totally different thing, mindset.
And that is the same thing I've found too. Again, it always came down to the not the pace of the game, but the endurance of the game, and then the willingness to adjust just a tad bit from we're trying to make a play to we're trying to build a phase out, you know. And I know even for me, I had that same issue. Like when I started playing, again, I'm coming off as a former linebacker, played mostly in high school, tried in college. I'm a running back. I'm a linebacker. I headhunt and I just put my head down and run through. And so it becomes kind of having to readjust your field of awareness to what you're looking for. But it was never to a point where it was like, I can't do this. It was just like that early stages. You're just setting yourself up. You just know what you know. You know I can hit well and I can run well.
Right.
I'm gonna go with the simplicity of that.
Right. And that's always for me, that was the key. You know, these are the things that you do. Now let's work to improve and do better on all the areas that you can do.
So, you know, you're running with the GrayWolves now. You guys have the tours up and running. What were some of the things that you guys tried to do or hope to have been able to do when it came to now kind of recruiting new players? Like, was there any initiatives that you guys started trying to enact on to be able to actually bring in new people into the system?
The first tournament, with the one in Savannah, when we got together, the first thing we had our meeting and talked and stuff, and one of the guys came up and says, we want to work with the youth. And so that became one of our primary goals. We would work with the youth. So we were in Savannah, they had a middle school, and we went to that middle school and did a demonstration and talked to the kids and did all this stuff. And that took off. That took us off with that. And so and that was part of the deal, is that, okay, we'll come and play in the community, because at one point we started getting teams wanted to play us. Of course, they wanted to beat us, but they wanted to play us. So we started getting invited. But the initial deal was, we are about the kids. We're going to work with the kids in the community. So if you're not going to follow up once we come in, then we're not going to come. And so that became our primary goal, is that we will come and play, but we're going to interact with the kids. So we would go in like 4 days early before the tournament and go into the high schools and the middle schools and interact and do with the kids. The other thing we did is that we talked to the teachers and so on, and we would like, okay, we have honorary captains. And so we would say, okay, we want the kid we don't want that good kid that's going to make it and he's done all this good stuff. We want that kid that's been a pain in your ass, and then all of a sudden he turns around or she turns around.
Right.
And is doing stuff. And so then once we got that established, and that was always went well with the teachers, and then we would have at the end, the night before we played, we'd have a banquet, and those kids would be honored at our banquet.
That's dope.
And that was great. That was great. And so that became the really primary part. So we went places, I think one of the things we did it in Compton, California. And we went to a lockdown school where all the kids would quarter punt it, and they had to go there, and they had cribs and they had bloods and stuff, and all these guys at the school. And we went there, talked, did our brought them out, did rugby demonstration and stuff like that. And one of the things the director says, he looked at me and he says, "You guys are awesome."
Yo.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" He says, "These kids don't talk to each other, but you got a blood and a crib lifting an Asian gang member in a line out situation. You know, these kids, and that was one of the highlights that we realized that it was important, and kids would respond, and I think that was one of the things that we saw, we felt, and we got positive feedback. We got a lot of feedback, and we had a lot of kids that ended up playing rugby, and so that was pretty positive.
And I love hearing that, because that's one thing that I have found kind of in this rugby journey that I've been on, from playing and then being on the media side. There's one thing about rugby that has been consistent. Every time I go and I'll talk to somebody about it, particularly within either a disenfranchised neighborhood or really just in general, like, there's nobody who I've ever met who's rejected the idea of rugby. They might not play, but nobody's ever rejected it. And then whenever we've had someone play, almost I can maybe count maybe one time, barely, that I've actually had someone go like, nah, this isn't for me. Like, I can't do this. No, everybody somehow has managed to synchronize themselves into the game. And it's like, yo, this is so awesome. This is so great.
Oh God, yes. We were in when it was in Denver, Colorado, and it was there for a while. And they were getting right at the start of getting youth rugby going on in Colorado and stuff. And so we had this guy we coached. We had two teams that we were working with, high school teams. One was in blood territory. One was in crib territory. So as things went along, we didn't have enough players to make two teams. Mm-hmm. So we went and told the kids and said, okay, look, this is what we have. There's not enough to play unless we combine. And this is what you have. And so, and then this is what the thing is. The schools are scared that you're going to have administration that, you got bloods and you got cribs and the uniforms and stuff like that. So the kids were like, Coach, we will figure this out. We want to play rugby. And so we were able to combine those teams together to play rugby. But they wanted to play rugby. And that's what they did. And so we ended up getting red, white, blue uniforms. So they took care of that.
There will be no bias on any side. Everybody becomes a blood and a crib simultaneously. What are you going to do about it?
And I want to tell you, it was, and this is a black team, and it was just great. So we're playing a team that was pretty good. I think they had finished second in the state the year before, and we were playing them for our first game. And holy mackerel, the first half was like, it was scary. Our kids were getting jacked up, and I was, okay, the fight's gonna come. By the second half, they had figured this out.
Boom.
Oh yeah. And they started playing. The fight came a little bit because of the white boys.
Because they started getting beat. That emotion kicks in.
Yeah, all of a sudden shit changed on them. And they were like, "Oh hell no!" So, but I was so proud of those kids because they learned. Yeah. And they wanted to play rugby, and that was always one of the things that stuck in my mind. Kids want to do if you give them an opportunity, and that went along with women. We go to the high schools and we do demonstrations. It was ironic because there were some big sisters, and the brothers didn't want to get out there messing with them and stuff. That was always pretty cool. It's like, no, I ain't going out there with her.
Oh, she's gonna mess me up. She gonna what? No, you know what's funny? We have one of my friends, Shane, out of Memphis. Him and a friend of his started a program, Memphis Inner City Rugby, and you watch them play. It's essentially predominantly black kids from the Memphis area, both boys and girls, high school and under, and it's essentially bringing these kids together to play rugby. And when you watch these kids play rugby, it is legitimately a thing of beauty, because it's not just a factor that, they play well. Right. It's a factor that it is a pure joy. It is, and then what they've done is found ways to be able to get these kids into universities that they never would have been able to before.
Right.
And so
Right.
now you're seeing an opportunity value that goes along with it. And then you talk to them, and it's just like a whole dream change in how
Right.
they perceive the world, because you have this organization, this organized sport, which everybody has organized sports, but it's the range of it. It's different than it would be with soccer, because I am a big believer that contact sports are needed to get the initial energy and rage out of people. So
Right.
then whenever it comes off the pitch, everybody is at at least a certain standard of chill. It's like,
Right.
what can you say after you've gone up against each other on the field? You come off and everything seems far less daunting, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
is a cultural changer when you see it happen. And I think that is the biggest significance, how much this sport can play into literal cultural change from just,
Right.
60 minutes, 15 minutes of playing. And just, it's wild to me. It's wild and especially with the girls' side, completely
Oh, yeah.
changing how they look at the world. Nobody can mess with these. Nobody can mess with these girls after that.
Yep. Oh, it is, and I think that was what we kept dealing with, and we kept seeing that the attitudes were always good. I mean, and the kids, they were just willing. They were willing to try, and they once they figured it out and they really learned it. Oh yeah, it's a whole different ball game now.
Right.
And we definitely had a lot of kids that we were able to help, along with the schools and the teachers and stuff that went on to college. I think years later, one year we were down in New Mexico playing, and this kid came up and he's talked to me. He was playing with someone, and he says, "GrayWolves," he says, "you guys came to my school in Washington, D.C. and talked to us and stuff." And that's got me into college. From there on, I went to college and moved on and stuff like that. And that was the type of things that we wanted to hear. And that was good. That was good.
I was about to say, how was that feeling? Because for whatever it's worth, like people, whatever you can be the most unemotional person in the world, but there's something about knowing that you had a part in a person's future progression that hits in such a different way.
Oh yeah. It is just awesome, and we could feel it. We could feel it even after we talked to the kids, and stuff. We could feel it when they would come up and talk to us after we did the demonstration and got them involved. And it was all about, we want you to go to college, because 80% of the GrayWolves were college graduates.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, we want you to go to college. This is what we do, and so on. And so it was that element of pushing them to step forward and do more than they thought they could do. And so that was always really good.
Yeah, even in terms of that, I remember, so I went to Asia this past year for a couple months doing a kind of a rugby tour. Me and a friend of mine were bike riding across Southeast Asia, seeing these rugby-based charities and heading out to the Rugby World Cup itself. And we went out to Cambodia, and, Cambodia is not a place where you think they would be the heaviest rugby place in the world.
Right.
And the tournament that we were at, it was a friend of ours, the Kampuchea Bulab. That was the name of the organization. And they had a tournament, was all these girls that were there. Some girls that were from Singapore, which were predominantly white girls from Singapore. And then you had these little Cambodian girls. And we're talking about from U12 to U16, to U17, U16. Ram, when I tell you that these tiny little Cambodian girls were some of the cleanest, hardest tackling little girls I'd ever seen in my life. Like, they full up. Like, you're talking about, they have to be maybe 40, 50 pounds tiny, full wrap-up change, knocking these Singapore girls out. And you're like looking, you're like, yo, what is happening right now? And of course, as they got older, the weight differences started to play into the favor. But the thing that really stuck out from that was when you talk to the girls, it changed their trajectory of what they were looking at with their life. Changed from it being, we're going to end up being just a wife or, a cook or, something that was in the narrow view of what is expected of them traditionally. To, these women were like, we're about to go travel the world. I want to be a baker. Look, I'm about to be an accountant. I'm like, you're 13 years old. Like, how are you over here? But it again, it goes back. It's the culture changer. And then to know that you have that impact or that effect, and you can see it in live. It's not like a movie. It's not something that you're seeing it in real time. It's wild. It's wild how tremendous that can actually be. Right. So you guys have been doing this with the GrayWolves. So at what point was it like, what's the word I want to say? It feels like there a downturn started happening. Maybe like you guys maybe weren't playing as often, or you weren't traveling as much, or what changed?
I think that was pretty much it. All of a sudden, we start to reach a time frame that we would set up tournaments, and we'd set up stuff, and of course we sent out all the information. Okay, guys, this is where we're gonna go. Everybody did not have to make every tournament, but you had to let us know that you're gonna come. And so I think after a while, probably we would set up stuff, and then I would get that dread call the week before the tournament. Well, Ram, and it was like, okay, guys, you can't do this because we set all this stuff up, ahead of time, and you have all this time. You have, because our term is basically 6 months apart. Right. So every 6 months we go, and we started working on it, and then we'd ask, okay, where we want to go and stuff. And so it started getting to the point that we weren't recruiting as many. It wasn't getting there as much as we needed guys to keep doing, because at the early stage, everybody was recruiting.
Right.
All the guys, the team, they were recruiting. You got to come play. You got to come play. And then it started kind of to drop off a little bit. And then a couple of times we started running into situations where we just didn't have the group that we needed. And the thing was, we were playing top of the line teams.
Right.
We weren't, we would go and play, but we also wanted to play the top of the top of the line.
You want to challenge yourself, of course. You want to see what the mark of this, essentially an all-star select team, can do.
Right. So when that started falling off, then that kind of hurt the overall performance of what we were doing, and so on. And so it just finally started. I started getting pretty frustrated because I could not get that commitment, that positive commitment, and so on and stuff. And so and that became a drag. That became a drag.
About what year did you start to see that downturn start to occur?
Oh, now you're asking. Jesus.
I challenge. Under the scope.
Man. Hey man, you do realize I'm old, I'm trying to go back and stuff. Matter of fact, I had to pull out the book, one of the books. I had to find out what was going on and stuff. God, probably, oh God, I can't.
Early 2000s, late 90s?
Probably early 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was early 2000 that things kind of started to drop a
Mhm.
little bit. Because up until that point in time, it might have been even a little later that we were able to do it. But yeah, I think we were there not quite 10 years, but it was pretty close to
Okay.
what we were doing.
So kind of in that time that you guys have been playing, you're talking. It sounds there's also like this adjustment in the play of rugby. So from 1974 to let's say 2005, 2008, something like that. The style and play of rugby. How much did you notice in terms of the adjustment, like in how it was done, how it was ref, how it was kind of impacted? Because I wonder if even to that effect, it started playing into what would happen with the touring squad, because the culture of rugby was changing in the U.S. bit by bit by bit.
I think when I'm just trying to figure out what up until a point in time, everything was still really pretty good. We were still playing very competitive. Rugby was still a very competitive game in a lot of ways. But I do think that then some of the laws started to change and stuff, and I'm not really sure if the I think with us also the guys got older,
Yeah.
and then they started having families and stuff like that, and so I think that was a major part of it. Um, the traveling, and of course it got a little bit more expensive, and so on and so on. So I think those things started to have some effect on us and stuff. I don't think the game per se was instrumental in as far as change is concerned, because I think that was still, we still understood that. We
Right.
still understood that stuff. But I do think that probably with some of the changes as guys got older and or started getting married and stuff like that, that kind of had an effect.
Those damn families ruining all the good
God.
rugby.
Hey man, yeah, 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 yeah. you know, uh, and for a long while it was all good because it was just the way it was going and everybody was doing it. But I also, and probably like I said, everybody started slowing down and stuff like that.
Right.
And then it got expensive because then I ended up covering more stuff than I really could afford to do and stuff like that. But the game, as far as the style of play and the game itself, I think we were so far ahead, and I think that's what kind of took a whole bunch of people off guard, because our style of play was fast,
Right.
And we just had developed that this was going to be a quick game. We got big boys, we can run them, but we're not going to beat them up. We're going to let them run and let them set stuff up too. And so I think that was one of the things that really took everybody off guard. All of a sudden, here's this group of guys out here, and we're all moving, and we're doing a fast game. And so I think that had a big time impact in our play and the success that we had with the teams. And I think that's something we could continue to do, and as I coach now with the university, that is still my game plan.
Yeah.
I tell my guys, I would rather run the other team's scrum to death. And the cats don't like to be running,
Right.
When they have to run, they're not happy people, and So let's make them work.
Leave it to the backs to try and kill the forwards. All
Hey, but it was that deal is, but it was, and I think that that was just really good for us. That was just really, really good for us as far as our style of play, which I think really took teams off guard because they really wanted to. Well, we're going to play, and they wanted to beat us up, and that's not happening.
You can't beat them up if you can't touch them.
Can't catch them. You can't do it. And so. But I think as time changed, and it's like now and today, I think not too long ago I was watching one of the videos of a game. It might have been one of the older World Cup games, and they were talking. No, it was recently, but anyhow, they were talking about a new play that they were showing this new play. And I started laughing. It's not new. We did that back then. It's new because it's coming back around.
Right.
But it's not new. That's something that we're doing. So I think a lot of ways rugby, just a lot of stuff that's coming back around.
Right.
That was part of the old game and stuff, and now it's just coming
cycled back.
back.
Again, time is cyclical, not linear, and so there's always somehow it comes back. Whether the presentation changes a little bit, but the core concept is always consistent.
Right, But I there was just some moments with the GrayWolves. There was just some moments. I remember we played in and like I said, these guys are just talented. We were playing in Washington D.C. And we were playing Chuck on the Bay, I think, and we had our inside center his name was Jerry Gomez. He was a Hispanic kid from Texas.
Nice.
First time in my whole rugby career is Jerry was killing his inside center, just killing him, and the guys were jumping on the guys. You got to control. And Jerry's just wearing him out. He's just wearing him out. And finally, the dude turned around and told them all, "Shut up! I need some help." And it was like, and I was rolling. He's like, "I need help. Y'all need to get here because this cat is hurting me." But we would have those moments that guys would just do some stuff that was just amazing. And we ended up having 2 Eagles. We ended up having 2 Eagles that came through the GrayWolves team.
Who were the Eagles? Who were the specific Eagles?
Rory Lewis.
Nice.
And a guy by the name of Cliff Vogel.
Oh, he was like the second black rugby player for the U.S. team or something like that?
He was there for, I'm trying to remember when Cliff was there. I can't remember the date.
It's like 80, 86 or 90, something like that?
In there. Yep. Cliff was, let's see. Yeah, Cliff was a little bit older back then. Now, there was another guy, Richard Prim, who was also a sevens player, Eagle and stuff like that. So yeah, but Cliff was a little older and stuff. So a little younger and stuff. So, but he came out of Kansas City at the beginning.
Steak and potato boys. Steak and potato boy.
Amen. First time I saw him, the guy went to tackle. He stepped all over him. He was like, oh. And so, but yeah.
How often do you get a chance to catch up with some of these guys from the GrayWolves? Because I got to assume that network had to be legit.
Yeah, actually, I keep up with the guys and stuff on Facebook and so on. And this year, I'm going to see Cliff. They're always on my butt. Ram, we need to get back together. We need to come together. And so, they keep working me, so we might try to do that. So,
Well,
and that would be fun.
Look, you know, we have this tournament called the HBCU Rugby Classic, and we're bringing all these teams, high school club and college teams, and you know, I feel like it'd be a really great situation to get the GrayWolves and the Roots guys maybe come together. I mean, we're talking about history repeating itself, coming together, old school and new school. Look. I'm
Hey,
just
man.
saying. Think about it. Think about it.
Hey, man. Yeah, I'll think about it.
Oh,
you know, go ahead.
Oh no. Finish what you were about to say.
No, but yeah, but they're constantly on me and stuff, and so on. So, but there was just so much. The dynamics of everything was just so great, you know. And no matter where we were and what we did, it was just really, really, really good. And the guys stuck together. I think out of all the times, we had one person that had an attitude because of play, and we tried to get everybody playing time, and everybody's had. We had one person that had a bad attitude, and the team took care of that. I didn't have to deal with it.
I'm assuming he either was properly talked to or no longer made himself on the team.
Yeah. Well, let's say he set up in the stands that game. So.
Yeah. Oh, so you know, looking into it now, you know, we talk about a lot of what you guys dealt with and what you guys were able to impact. Looking at it now, you've been a coach. You were at University of Idaho as a coach, right? Or
Idaho State.
Idaho State. And you know, as a recruiter, being able to see these kids coming in, are you seeing things that you feel have changed for the positive, or you know, maybe a better question to ask here, what are some of the holes that you're seeing now that you feel that that need to be filled or need to be handled at this point?
I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now is the kids that are coming in is about attitude, especially when we're recruiting the high school kids. You know, they have that attitude that they know it all, and trying to get them to really work and work hard. You know, well, I no, you don't. You know, you need to take some time, listen, and learn, and then you will figure some stuff out. But I think that's been one of my biggest pet peeves with high school coaches, of what they're coaching these kids as they come out, and it's just it's not where it should be.
Yeah.
It could be better. The kids could be better prepared. They could have much better attitudes than they do, and in the sense that they know it all, and they don't. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves. You know, and nowadays some of my players will come back from the university, and they'll come out to practice, and they'll tell me, "It's you know, you coach, you kind of mellowed out and stuff, you know, because you need to do all this stuff, you know, and stuff." And I think about that. I'm not as scary as I used to be.
You're getting soft getting soft with time there.
You know, I think so, and then and that, I think that was one of the things, even with the GrayWolves, you know,
Yeah.
I softened up on them a little bit too, you know. But yeah, I think that we have some really, really talented high school kids coming out of high school and stuff but the culture, the attitude is not what I consider rugby. You know, it's not. It's not. Let's go play hard, work hard, beat each other up, but then after the game, let's get together, communicate, and talk, and
Right.
stuff like that. I don't see that going on. You know. And I just don't see that element of respect that should be there for playing the game. And
Right.
I think we lost that element.
No, no, it's hopefully something, because it like I've said, I think that's the biggest component of the culture is what happens once you're done playing. You know, once
Right.
you've beaten each other up, once you've done, that's where the connection ends up coming, and the differentiation steps from
Right.
maybe a lot of other sports. So, like, I know as we move towards this commercial element, which I love the commercial element. I feel like this is something that's needed to be done, but it
Right.
doesn't need to be done at the cost of maybe that deep tie that still holds you to, hey, let's grab a drink, you know, maybe not always a beer anymore, but let's grab a drink
Right.
together. Let's break bread together after
Right.
the game and be able to utilize it, because if you take that away, I don't know if it really stands the same overall.
It doesn't. You know, I mean, that's just so important part, and that was always my thing about the game is that that's so important. You know, it's important to sit down and, like I said, you know, you sit down, you interact with someone. You played against a guy on the field, and he did something that was like, oh, damn, that's cool. I want to learn. You know,
Right.
and then you have that opportunity to talk to him and stuff. You know, I had an English kid that kicked my butt with some kicks one game, and I couldn't get him, and he just did all this stuff on me. Well, you know, that night after a few beers, we're in the parking lot. He's teaching me how to do this.
That's
You know,
so
and you're like,
awesome.
you gonna teach me this mess? I don't care. You know. But when you try to tell kids, and I try to get my guys, watch people play, watch what they do. They want to do it.
Yeah, I think that's
Yes.
going to end up coming back to what happened with the travel component. And I'm hoping after all this coronavirus crisis subsides a bit, and we're able to start moving, I think that part is the traveling, whether no longer maybe just domestically, but, you know, for having people be able to travel a little bit more internationally and maybe
Right.
get a flip of the culture, because I think sometimes maybe these kids can be a little bit homogenous just because the internet keeps everybody so connected at a
Right.
certain point that you need to have something that is ultimately shocking and
Right.
and to say, okay, let me reel it back. Oh, this is what this is supposed to mean. This is the humility, but at the same time, the confidence that I'm able to take from it. And that's why I play the game, as opposed to just, hey, we play, trying to get a college scholarship, trying to go into pros, maybe make the international, and it kind of puts a blinder on the totality of what the sport offers.
You know, and definitely coming to college, because college rugby is it
Yeah.
and stuff. But it's like, okay, guys, but again, you know, sometimes I think we lose high school kids when they come to college, because it's not going to be the same level as it was when you're in high school. I
Right.
mean, it's going to go up, and you
Right.
have to expect that it's going to go up and stuff. And so
I mean,
sometimes that's pretty interesting.
I mean, that's part of it. Like, you have to. You need to understand there's still a filtration, but there's still a part. And that's why one thing I'll say, and then, you know, I'll start to wrap this up. But one thing I've always been a believer on, especially when it comes to tapping into the Black community and being able to use rugby, that rugby is a sport that, if you're going into the Black community, it needs to be more than just about athletics. It is about the totality of the sport. Putting in an administrative position, a referee position, exec positions, understanding logistics, like understand that there's so many pieces that are here, which is ironic for a sport that is as old as rugby, but it feels very young in terms of sports marketing, sports business development.
Right.
But if you're going to go and bring them in with an intent to create a roundedness and say that, hey, even if you're not doing something athletically, hey, there's this other component. Let's get you into these possible GM positions, and the beauty with rugby, and you know this, create a team, create a touring team. Maybe you can create the GM on that, and you can be able to provide that and understand the branding. And now that the marketing plays into it and all, it's a much wider field that can go, and it doesn't have to limit itself like some of these other sports that are now more prominent, like football and basketball. They seem to limit people in.
I think that was one of the things, and we tried. I mean, I know that we tried. Just a little break financially would have just been tremendous for us, because the guys were doing such good stuff. They were just doing such good stuff, but we also just couldn't get that financial.
No one to really sit and sponsor it or anything. And that's look, I could have literally a whole other hour conversation with you when it comes to like sports marketing and just how to be able to do that. But I want to save that for another time, because I want to be able to have you back, But kind of to wind this down for you, one, I read somewhere that you recently retired from your position at Idaho State.
Right.
Congratulations
Thank you.
on making these markers. But for you, with all the knowledge that with rugby and what you've been doing between coaching and just being an observer, what do you feel is next for you within the sport, and subsequently, what do you think is next for rugby?
For me, and I'll be honest with you. So in 2005, I was inducted into the Rugby Hall of Fame for Lifetime Achievement Award. I take that with a grain of. It was good. It was cool. I was really honored to be able to do that, to be there. But the thing that was really interesting with that is I don't feel I need to be able to use that, and I can't in a sense. I've never been a person that's going to talk about myself a whole hell of a lot. But
give me the information so I can talk about you.
But I think that's one of the things that I feel that's really hurt, in a sense, that I don't do that because of that. Because when I go and I see these young kids at tournaments, and these young high school kids at tournaments and stuff, I want to be able to talk a little bit about that, because I want them to see that, hey, this is where you can go in the sport, and especially the kids of color that are playing the game. But I can't, and I'm not going to get that element of respect from the white coaches. It's just not going to happen, and I realize that, and so it's really tough to do that. But I think one of the things that is very, very important is that the kids of color have got to see success on the rugby level. They got to see people that are playing, the guys that are playing rugby at a level that's going to help them, to motivate them. Because there's a lot of kids of color now that are playing rugby. And we need to make sure that we continue to encourage and continue to get them to the point that they see this is where I can go. Because contrary to popular belief, the kids of color are facing the same things. It hasn't changed that much. It hasn't changed that much. And the kids of color are facing some of the same things that we were facing when we were and how we're going to get that, how we're going to be able to motivate these kids and to get them is that's my big worry, because I've watched and I've seen the coaches doing this, and they're not doing it.
Right.
They're not helping the kids of color really learn the game, and that bothers me. That bothers me. So I'm not sure how to turn that around, but we need to really concentrate, and they're basically rugby is going to say, oh no, but it's a fact. It's a fact. It is still there, but we have so much more talented kids that are playing now that we need to figure this out.
I am 100% in agreement with you on that, and I thankfully I think we're starting to. I think there's a little bit of an underground that's starting to pop up from it and present it, and this is where having wisdom like yourself be able to come in. So please, I will say this out loud and publicly: don't allow yourself to disappear behind the ether, because we're out here wanting to be able to do it, and it is a rough game. But we love being able to have minds like yourself who pioneered it, to be honest with you.
Well, the other day, I still got this thing, I hit 70 this year.
Congratulations.
And I'm working out, I'm doing my little thing. And so the other day, last week, I went out and I did a couple of things. One day I did something else the next day. And then I did something the third day.
Oh, I think you paused. I think you muted. Oh. Hold on. Ram, I can't hear you. Hold on one sec. I think for some reason you got muted. Okay. Okay, I can hear you again.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. But continue with what you were saying. You said one day and then it disappeared on me.
So then I thought, oh yeah, you can hang. I'm doing this mess, man. I had to take a week off. I couldn't move. I set in some Epsom salt. That didn't even help. I was like, okay, brother, okay. You're at that point now.
It's like, okay, I have to maybe come to my reality at this point. I got to come to my reality.
Yeah.
Ram Eddings.
Hey, man, I really appreciate this. I really do.
Dude, the pleasure is absolutely mutual. And like I told you, it's something I've wanted to do and have this conversation for a long time. And, for me, it means the most, not only just to have you, but to hear your story and to know that that there are people who understand the struggle in a big way, and that to try and want to and have a desire to make changes and improve things. Let's call it improve things significantly. So I really do appreciate you taking the time.
And as everything breaks out, and stuff like that, we get back to moving around. I would definitely be interested in coming your way. So
love it. I love it.
Let me, that would be great. I still travel, and I'm still happy. I'll get in my car and drive anywhere.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I don't need the planes all the time. Let me travel, except for once it steps outside of the 18-hour range, and I'm taking a plane. Once we go past 18 hours, this is where my cutoff moment is. Ram, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it,
guys. Yo, that was legit, right? Like I learned so much, and it was so nice to know that some of the struggles and the difficulties that he dealt with, while it's annoying that some things are very much the same, but it's the fact that we know that we can make differences. It's not simply a roadblock, and things move forward, and we have much more data, and there's more black players, and there's more opportunities right now, but we can take advantage. We need to still break through, but man, I really was happy. I appreciated Ram for being able to come on. Great guy. Like, man, that is a salt of the earth kind of guy. And I hope his Idaho State guys do well. But man, that was good. And guys, look, we still got some other great podcasts that are coming up, but more importantly, we got a bunch that we have behind. And if you haven't heard it, check it out. We just talked to Charity Williams, Canada Women's Sevens last week. The week before that, we spoke with Blaine Scully of USA Rugby, co-captain at the Rugby World Cup. Before that, we had Angie Elena, who with Swiss Women's Rugby. We had Chise Belu with Pedal, a schooling and university place. We had Phil Thiel. We had Raheem Vital and Mike Toussaint. We had Naya Tapper, USA Women's Rugby. We had Saifuddin Safir with Morehouse College. Like, guys, and gotta always throw it down, Kyle and Tiana Granby with Roots Rugby. Great interviews. Definitely go check them out. You guys are gonna love them. And please, of course, if you guys feel like this is some good content, pass it on to your friends. Let them know. Let them get the information, because we want to make sure that we're providing the information that creates a better global connection with the rugby community here and abroad, as well as being able to give you the freedom to be able to use these opportunities to be able to expand and enhance your own life. Like, we want to do great things with this for more than just a little bit of talk. This isn't just sports talk. We're talking life talk, whether it's in a party life, or whether it is economic life, or whether it's basic social life. Like, one way or another, we want you to be able to tap in and know that this community is very much there for you. So I appreciate that you guys took the time to listen to this. I appreciate the fact that you guys have been there. Please go take a look at the documentary, Singapore to Tokyo, any way we can. Available now on video on demand. Check it out at the rugbyoutletmall.com. It is going to be up and about, and you guys get excited. And I'm excited to have you guys here. This is GiftTime at Bailu, and I will talk to you later.